Hi everyone, welcome back. Let's write some more Leetcode today. Today we are solving check if grid can be cut into sections. So the problem states that we are given a 2D array of coordinates called rectangles. And in each element, the first two elements will represent the bottom left coordinate of the rectangle, and the last two elements will represent the top right coordinate of the rectangle. And our goal is to check that if we can make two horizontal cuts or two vertical cuts on the grid. And when we make a cut, we need to make sure that no parts of a certain rectangle is cut out. And we want to see if we can make two or more cuts that way. So if we look at this example, we cannot make any vertical cuts, but we can make two horizontal cuts, so we will return true. So now that we have seen some examples, let's get to how we can solve this problem. So one way that we can solve this problem is we can sort this rectangles array. The first time we will sort horizontally, and the second time we will sort vertically. And after sorting, we will compare the x coordinates when it is sorted horizontally, and when it's sorted vertically, we will compare the y coordinates. And what we want to compare is we will check the end of one x coordinate and the beginning of the next x coordinate. And if we see that there is no overlap, then we can increase the number of gaps by 1. And we will do the same when we search through the y coordinates. And in the end, if there are two or more gaps, either in the horizontal search or the vertical search, then we can return true. If not, then we return false. So let's go through this example real quick. And as you know, when we do the horizontal search, we will look at the first and third element because this is the left side of the rectangle, this is the right side. When we do the vertical search, we will look at the second and fourth element because this is the bottom of rectangle and this denotes the top of rectangle. But let's first sort it horizontally. So we will initialize gaps to 0 and the furthest in the beginning is 2. Look to the right for this is 4. There's an overlap between 2 and 0, so we don't increment gaps. Look to the right again, there's an overlap again, but we need to set furthest to 5 now. Look to the right again, 5 and 3 has overlap and the furthest is still 5. So horizontally, we cannot make any cuts, so there will be 0 gaps, but let's see if we can make any vertically. So we'll initialize gaps to 0 and the furthest is 2. Look to the right, 2 and 2 doesn't overlap, so we can increment gaps and we set furthest now to 4. Look to the right again, the furthest is still 4 and there's overlap between 2 and 4, so we keep gaps at 1. And we look to the right again, 4 and 4 have no overlap, so we can increment gaps and we set the furthest to 5, and now we have reached the end of the array. And we do see that we can make 2 gaps vertically, so we return true. And the time complexity would be O of n log n because we will have to sort the rectangles array twice, and that would take n log n time. And the space complexity would be O of n because it will take n space to sort an array in Python. However, in some languages, the sorting algorithm may have a different space complexity, so check which sorting algorithm your language uses. And now let's get to the coding part. So first we will make the check method for horizontally and vertically. So rectangles and the dimension. And we will return check for rectangles at 0 and check for rectangles 1. Only one of them have to be true. So initially we'll set gaps to 0 and we will sort it. So we will do key lambda r and r of the dimension. Key equals lambda r colon r dimension. And the furthest will be set to rectangles of 0 of dimension plus 2. And now we will loop through rectangles from index 1 to the end. So for I in range 1 to the length of rectangles. And we will set the rectangles of I to rect, R-E-C-T. And if the furthest is less than or equal to the rect of dimension, then that means there's no overlap, so we can increase the number of gaps by 1. And we also need to set the furthest again, so it will be the max of furthest or the rect of dimension plus 2. And in the end, we just want to check if we have 2 gaps or more. Okay, let's see if it works. Okay, perfect. Thank you all for watching. Hope this was helpful. If you have any other questions or comments, feel free to leave it down in the comment section, and I hope to see you all again soon.